There is a sacred whisper beneath the noise of the world, a gentle pull in the chest, a stillness between your thoughts that speaks not in words, but in remembrance. And if you will only be quiet enough to hear it, you will remember what you have always known, but have forgotten in the thunder of becoming, that you are not a stranger to this life, nor a seeker of distant light. You are the light itself, cloaked for a moment in flesh and time, but eternal beyond every measure. Before you had a name, before the world told you who to be, you were. And what you were then, you still are now. Untouched by the tides of approval or the winds of failure, there exists within you a place so holy, so untouched by the world, that no sorrow can stain it and no joy can improve it. It is whole, not because it has everything, but because it is everything. But you forgot. You forgot as the world taught you to look outward. You forgot as you became the roles you were praised for. You forgot as you sought to belong in places that required you to become someone else to be accepted. You wore masks not because you were false, but because you believed it was the only way to be loved. And each layer you added in the name of survival took you further from the remembrance of your soul. And yet, you've never truly been lost. The truth of you has never wavered, never wandered. Like the sun behind the clouds, it has waited with unwavering patience for you to return, not by traveling, not by achieving, but by unbecoming, by letting go, by surrendering the noise and standing naked in your being again. You see, you are not your story, not the pain that shaped you, not the wounds you carry, not the mistakes you made when you forgot your light. Those are passing clouds. But you are the sky. You are the vastness behind the weather, the silence behind the sound, the stillness in which all things rise and fall. And when you remember this, not as a thought, but as a truth that vibrates through your bones, everything changes. You stop striving to become and start allowing yourself to be. You stop chasing love and start realizing you are love in form. You stop fearing death because you remember that what you truly are cannot die. Rumi once said, "You were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life?" And I ask you now, beloved soul, what wings have you hidden in the name of safety? What songs remain unsung within your heart because the world convinced you to be quiet? You are not here to be small. You are not here to be good in the eyes of a broken system. You are here to radiate, to be a living transmission of the divine. Not someday, not when you're healed or enlightened or ready, but now, in this breath, in this moment. The great lie of the ego is that you must earn what you already are. It tells you that worth is found in effort, in accumulation, in the eyes of others. But the soul has no interest in applause. It seeks only authenticity. It wants not to perform, but to remember. And in that remembering, it comes alive. You are not a human being reaching toward the spiritual. You are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. Your essence was not born, and it cannot die. It came from source and remains connected to it, no matter how tangled your mind has become in the dramas of form. There is nothing you must do to be worthy of love. There is nothing you must fix to be complete. You have spent enough years trying to become someone. Now is the time to return to no one, to dissolve into the I am that needs no embellishment. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." Not above, not beyond, but within. And yet, how often do we search for it in things that cannot hold it, in relationships, in accomplishments, in possessions? We climb mountains only to find the treasure was always buried in the ground of our own being. The soul doesn't ask you to add, it asks you to subtract, to strip away every identity you've worn that was never truly yours, to lay down the armor that you mistook for personality, to stop performing and simply start existing. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that watches them. You are not your body. You are the life that animates it. You are not your past. You are the presence that outlived it. And if you are still enough, even for a moment, you will feel it. Not as an idea, but as a truth so radiant it makes you weep. A sense of home that needs no location. A peace that passes all understanding. You don't need more information. You need more stillness. You don't need more answers. You need deeper surrender. You don't need more becoming. You need radical being. The Tao teaches us that the way to do is to be. And so I invite you now to stop doing for a moment. Just be. Breathe. Close your eyes and feel the life within you, not the story, not the narrative, but the aliveness that pulses through your cells. That aliveness is sacred. It is the divine in motion. And the more you dwell in it, the more your life will reflect it. Not because you've controlled it, but because you've aligned with it. There is a rhythm to life, a sacred unfolding that cannot be forced. You don't need to push the river. You only need to stop fighting the current. Let go of the need to know. Let go of the need to win. Let go of the need to be anything other than what you are. And what you are is love. Not a love that needs reciprocation, not a love that needs to be earned, but a love that simply is because it cannot be anything else. A love that forgives before the apology. A love that shines regardless of the weather. A love that says, I am here, I always have been. That love is you. When you begin to live from this space, this holy interior, you find that the world softens its edges. Not because the world itself has changed, but because the lens through which you view it is no longer clouded by fear. You begin to see with the eyes of the soul, and in those eyes, everything is already enough. The stranger is no longer a threat, but a reflection. The hardship is no longer punishment, but initiation. The silence is no longer empty, but full of presence. And yet, the ego will return. It always does. Like waves on the shore, it will rise with old stories. You must do more. You must be more. You are not enough. But now you are anchored. Now you recognize the voice not as truth, but as an echo from a time when you forgot, and you no longer have to believe it. You can let it speak and simply not follow. The ego shouts, the soul whispers, the ego demands, the soul allows, the ego competes. The soul includes, and the more you listen to the whisper, the louder your life will speak in beauty. You'll notice that peace no longer needs to be earned. It emerges naturally like light through an open window. You'll notice that joy no longer depends on outcomes. It is found in the simple act of presence. Washing a dish, holding a hand, feeling the wind move across your skin like the breath of the universe. You are not meant to live in striving. You are meant to live in surrender, not passive, but receptive. Receptive to what the divine has been trying to give you all along, once your hands stop grasping and start opening. Even your pain, especially your pain, holds an invitation. For what is pain if not the soul's call for deeper attention? It is not a punishment. It is not proof of failure. It is a crack in the shell of your illusion, making way for something deeper to be felt. The broken heart, the loss, the disappointment. These are not the end. They are the beginning, the sacred doorways through which grace can finally enter. You do not need to avoid your suffering. You need to embrace it, hold it, let it speak, not with your mind, but with your presence. Your presence is the balm. It does not fix, but it heals. It does not rush, but it stays. It does not analyze, but it sees. There is a you beyond the storm. There is a stillness deeper than the pain. There is a presence behind every shadow, patiently waiting to be known. And that presence is who you really are. You are not what happened to you. You are not what others see. You are not your thoughts or your history or your name. You are the one who has been watching it all. The one who stood in the fire and didn't burn. The one who walked through the sorrow and kept walking. The one who even now feels the pull of something greater. That pull is not a fantasy. It is the echo of your original truth. And your truth is not small. It is not conditional. It is not dependent on anyone's approval. Your truth is eternal. It was spoken into being by the same force that paints sunsets and gives breath to stars. Do you know how sacred you are? Not because of what you do, not because of what you accomplish, but because of what you are. A wave remembering it is the ocean. A flame remembering it is the Sunday. A being remembering it is divine. When you live from this truth, you no longer seek validation from others. Their praise or rejection becomes like wind across the surface of the lake. It ripples, yes, but it cannot disturb the depth, because the depth is yours, because the depth is you. And when others speak from fear, you meet them with compassion, not because you are better, but because you remember. You remember what it is to forget. You remember what it is to believe the lie of separation. And so you do not judge, you bless. You do not defend, you shine. This is the real revolution. Not a battle against the world, but a quiet uprising within it. A rising into presence, a rising into truth, a rising into love that asks for nothing and gives everything. And this rising, it changes everything. There will be moments on your path, quiet, aching moments when the loneliness returns, when the voice of the world grows louder than the whisper of your soul, when doubt cloaks the truth in shadows. And in those moments, you may question. You may wonder if the light within you is ever real or just a beautiful illusion in the vast wilderness of longing. But even in that darkness, something endures, a pulse, a flame, a knowing that cannot be undone by fear or time. This is the truth of you, the place that cannot be touched by circumstance. It is not your body. It is not your name. It is not even your mind. It is the silent observer behind it, all the witness that has watched you grow, stumble, rejoice, grieve, and keep going. That witness is unshakable. That witness is eternal. That witness is you. You may try to run from pain, but your soul will always find you, not to punish you, to call you home, to remind you again and again in the breathless stillness between your struggles that what you seek is not relief, but remembrance, not escape, but embodiment, not a new version of yourself, but the real one, the one that was never broken, never missing, never not enough. And so you begin to see that life is not here to wound you, it is here to refine you. Every heartbreak, every challenge, every lost hope was not the end of your story, but the alchemy of awakening. You were not being punished, you were being peeled open. And in that opening, the divine could finally reach you, not as a distant deity, but as the very essence of your being. For God is not far. God is not above. God is not elsewhere. God is within, closer than breath, closer than thought. And once you taste this truth, not intellectually, but intimately, it ruins you for anything less. You can no longer pretend to be small. You can no longer betray your essence for the comfort of fitting in. You can no longer numb yourself with distractions when the soul demands depth. You begin to crave silence the way others crave noise. You begin to value presence more than performance. You begin to measure success not by what you accumulate, but by what you release fear, shame, masks, expectations. And in that release, you rise. Not in the way the world glorifies, not in titles or trophies, but in softness, in clarity, in love. You become a sanctuary, not just for yourself, but for others. Your presence becomes a refuge, a place where others feel safe enough to set down their own mask. Because when you remember who you are, you give the world permission to do the same. And what greater offering could there be? Not to impress the world, but to heal it. One presence at a time, one breath at a time, one remembering at a time. But healing is not always beautiful. It is raw. It is messy. It asks you to meet yourself in the shadows, to hold the parts of you that were once abandoned. And yet even this is holy, because nothing about you is unworthy of love. Nothing. Not your anger, not your sorrow, not your doubts. Everything you feel is valid. Everything you are is sacred. You do not need to be perfect to be divine. You only need to be honest, to stand in the light of your own being and say, here I am, all of me, no more hiding. And when you do, when you surrender the performance and embrace the presence, something miraculous happens. You stop fearing life because you no longer see life as something happening to you. You see it as something happening for you. You begin to dance with it, not resist it. You begin to trust it, not control it. You begin to feel a sacred intelligence moving through everything, the pain, the joy, the silence, the noise, and you recognize it as your own reflection. The separation dissolves, and in its place, oneness. Not the concept, but the reality. A living, breathing oneness that doesn't need to be explained, only felt. A love that doesn't need to be earned, only remembered. A self that doesn't need to be improved, only revealed. You stop striving because there is nothing to strive for. You are already whole. You stop comparing because there is no one to compare yourself to. You are already enough. You stop searching because the destination was never somewhere else. You were always it. You just forgot, but now you remember. To live from this place of remembrance is not to float above the world untouched. It is to move through it fully awake, to laugh with the whole chest, to cry with reverence, to love without needing a guarantee, to feel not just for yourself, but for all beings who have ever yearned for a home they did not know was inside them all along. You begin to see with the eyes of the sacred. A withered tree becomes a teacher. A broken cup becomes a poem. The ache in your chest becomes a doorway. Everything becomes symbolic. Everything becomes holy. Why? Because you are no longer looking with the eyes of the ego, which divides, labels, and evaluates. You are looking with the eyes of the soul, which see not the thing, but the presence within the thing. Not the form, but the formless that animates it. And you realize at last that what you are is the same as what animates the stars. You are not in the universe is in you. Every drop of longing, every moment of grace, every flicker of love you have ever felt, it was all the same voice, speaking through different moments. And that voice is you remembering yourself. You no longer need to chase miracles. Your breath is the miracle. You no longer need to pray for something to arrive. You become the answer to your own prayer. And life begins to shimmer again. Not because it's always easy, but because you've stopped demanding it to be. You've made peace with what is. You've stopped fighting the moment. And in that surrender, the peace that once seemed so far away arrives and sits beside you like an old friend. Suffering begins to fade. Not because pain disappears, but because your relationship to pain transforms. You are no longer the wound, you are the witness. No longer the reaction, you are the response. No longer the victim, you are the vastness in which even this moment belongs. And when someone hurts you, you do not harden, you soften. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You see their actions not as reflections of your worth, but as reflections of their forgetting. You do not condone the behavior, but you also do not collapse into resentment, because you know who you are. And when you know who you are, you cannot be shaken by someone who has forgotten who they are. You are the unmoved mover. You are the still point in the center of the turning world. You are the eternal in the temporary, the sacred in the mundane, the light in all forms. And still the world may test you. It may pull at your old habits, provoke your old wounds, tempt you back into forgetting. But now you have tasted the truth, and the truth cannot be unlearned. Even when you drift, and you will return more quickly. You will notice sooner. You will feel the discomfort of pretending and say, no, not this, not again. And so the journey deepens not outward, but inward. Not into effort, but into intimacy. You begin to walk slower, speak softer, live fuller, not because you're trying, but because you're remembering. And this is the most beautiful thing of all. You no longer need to know what's coming. You no longer need to predict, plan, or prove, because you trust the unfolding. You trust the moment. You trust yourself, not the small self, but the sacred self that knows the way home in the dark. And that trust, it sets you free. Free to love without armor. Free to speak without fear. Free to exist without apology. Because who you are truly is enough. It always was. It always will be. There is a moment in the quiet when all doing ceases, when the world stops demanding your attention, and in that moment, something sacred rises. Not with fanfare, not with words, but with the soft insistence of presence itself. It rises not to announce itself, but to remind you there has never been a separation. Not between you and love, not between you and source, not between you and the life you came here to live. It was only your forgetting that made the distance feel real. And now, your remembering begins to close that imagined gap, not through force, but through the grace of awareness. Not through change, but through return. Return to the space between breaths. Return to the wisdom before words. Return to the self that was never touched by success or failure, gain or loss, praise or rejection. There is a sacred intelligence in every cell of your being and knowing that was formed before language, before time. You do not need to earn your way back to it. You need only to listen. Listen not with your ears, but with your being, with the same stillness that the stars hold as they burn silently across the sky, with the same reverence that the moon keeps as it watches the tides come and go, because within you too is a tide, a sacred rhythm, rising and falling, calling you home not to safety, but to authenticity, not to certainty, but to truth. And truth, when it is felt, no longer needs to be defended. It simply is. Like the sun does not argue with the night, like the mountain does not explain its silence, like the river does not justify its course, truth moves with grace because it knows its own roots. And your roots are not in your history. Your roots are in eternity. You do not grow from what you've done, you grow from what you are. The tree does not become itself by studying other trees. It becomes itself by trusting the seed, surrendering to the soil, and reaching into the light that has always called its name. So too with you. The way home is not through comparison, it is through courage. The courage to stop mimicking and start remembering. The courage to stand still in a world addicted to movement. The courage to feel deeply in a world that numbs. The courage to be whole in a world that profits from your fragmentation. And this courage, it is not loud, it does not shout, it does not demand an audience. It is quiet, sacred, and real. It moves like a prayer through the body. It breathes like trust through the heart. It speaks only when silence has said all it needed to say. And from this courage, your life begins to bloom, not like a firework, but like a flower. Not suddenly, but inevitably. Because that's what truth does. It does not rush. It does not strive. It unfolds. You do not have to push. You only have to open. And when you do, life moves through you, not as something to be controlled, but as something to be danced with. You stop clenching. You stop planning your joy. You stop outsourcing your peace. And you begin to live as you were always meant to, freely, fully, faithfully. Not because you followed someone else's map, but because you finally threw the map away and listened to your own feet. There is a voice beneath your thinking that never left you. It has been whispering since the beginning. You've heard it in the quiet between heartbreaks. You've felt it in the sacred pause before a decision. You've known it in the way your heart quickens in the presence of what is real. That voice is not your imagination. It is your invitation. It's not asking you to understand. It's asking you to remember and to trust that remembrance more than you trust the noise. Because the world will offer you many identities, most of them built on fear. But only one is true. Only one brings peace that does not depend on anything outside you. Only one can look at the chaos and still know, I am whole. That one is who you really are. There is a sacredness in moving slowly, in letting life reveal itself rather than demanding it perform. The world will try to convince you that speed is power, that acceleration is purpose, that to rest is to fall behind. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul knows that truth cannot be rushed. That becoming is not the goal, being is. That peace does not arrive through urgency, but through presence. And when you begin to slow down, truly slow down, you start to hear again. Not the voices of expectation or obligation, but the voice that was always there underneath. The voice of intuition. The voice of inner guidance. The voice of God, not as something outside of you, but as the quiet knowing within you that has never once left your side. You may have ignored it. You may have overruled it. You may have drowned it out with busyness and logic and doubt, but it never stopped whispering your name. And what is it saying? It is saying you are already what you long to be. You are not unfinished. You are not broken. You are not waiting to become. You are being asked to allow the fullness of what you are to emerge, not with effort, but with surrender. The rose does not bloom by pushing. It blooms by opening. The ocean does not move by striving. It moves by yielding to the moon. And so too with you. You were never meant to battle your way into wholeness. You were meant to remember that wholeness was always your home. There is an intelligence in you older than time, a consciousness deeper than thought, a presence more vast than space. And when you let that guide you, you stop chasing clarity and start embodying it. You stop needing answers because you start living the question. And in that living, answers come not through thought, but through resonance, through knowing, through an inner yes that is not logical, but undeniable. You are not here to build a life that looks good. You are here to live a life that feels true. You are not here to win the approval of the world. You are here to walk in alignment with your soul. And the path of the soul is rarely straight. It winds, it twists, it loops back. Because its goal is not efficiency, its goal is embodiment. To embody who you really are in every step, in every breath, in every conversation. Not perfectly, but authentically. You may fall. You may forget. You may find yourself in old patterns, old fears, old doubts, but you will not be lost. Because the soul never forgets the way home, and it will call you back again and again. Through every ache, through every joy, through every quiet moment that makes you feel like you've returned to something that has no name but feels like everything. This is not a journey of fixing. This is not a journey of becoming. This is a journey of unveiling, peeling away what you are not, so what you are can finally breathe. And what you are is not a role, not a title, not a success story or a redemption arc. You are presence. You are awareness. You are the open sky holding every weather, without judgment, without resistance. And when you live from that sky-like self, the storms may come, but they do not define you. You hold space for them, you let them pass, and in their passing, something deeper is revealed. Not a new version of you, but the original one, the one who was never hurt, never lost, never broken. The one who watched it all with eyes of love and said, even this is part of the path. You see, the soul does not need the path to be clean, it needs it to be real. And your realness is your liberation. And so here you are, not at the conclusion of a journey, but at the dissolving of the illusion that there was ever a distance to travel. Not reaching a summit, but laying down the burden of believing you had to climb anything at all to be worthy of the light that has always burned within you. This breath, this presence, this pulse of truth in your chest is not the aftermath of awakening. It is the essence of who you've always been. You were never the story. You were the space in which the story was told. You were never the striving. You were the stillness watching the striving unfold. You were never the name, the role, the identity that shifted with time. You were the I am behind it all. And now you remember, not with your mind, but with your being. Not through effort, but through surrender. The tides of fear no longer sweep you away because you have become the ocean. The winds of doubt no longer uproot you because you have found your roots not in thought, but in awareness. The opinions of others no longer imprison you because you have returned to the truth that you are not here to be approved, you are here to be real. And what is real does not need defense. It does not need explanation. It does not need applause. It simply shines. And that shining, that quiet radiance, is the natural expression of one who has ceased resisting their own light. No more pretending. No more waiting. No more postponing your own presence for some imaginary future where you will finally be enough. You are enough now. Because enough was never a measure. It was a remembrance. A falling back into the arms of your own soul and hearing, not in words, but in the depth of your being, you are already it. You are already home. You are already whole. You always have been. And now, the seeking softens. Not because it was wrong, but because it brought you here. The journey was never a mistake. The forgetting was never a failure. Even the pain had its purpose. It cracked the shell. It thinned the veil. It led you back not to a new version of yourself, but to the one who never left. And from this place, from this sacred awareness, you begin to live differently. You walk with reverence, not rush. You speak with presence, not performance. You love with freedom, not fear. You bless the moment not because it is perfect, but because you are present within it. And this is the miracle. Not that you have changed, but that you have remembered. And what you have remembered is eternal, that you are not a drop seeking the ocean. You are the ocean, remembering yourself in the form of a drop. You are not a soul chasing the divine. You are the divine, wrapped in the illusion of form. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not lacking. You are light. You are here. You are free. And so I say to you now, not as a lesson, but as a recognition. Live gently. Speak truthfully. Forgive completely. Love boundlessly. And above all, remember who you really are. Not just when it's easy. Not just when you feel aligned. But in the mundane, in the mess. In the moments that test your peace and tug at your old masks. Remember then. Because those are the moments when remembrance becomes liberation. And when you remember not just in thought, but in embodiment, you become a beacon. You don't need to preach. Your presence becomes the sermon. You don't need to save. Your stillness becomes the sanctuary. You don't need to fight. Your truth becomes the flame that lights others home. This world does not need more doing. It needs more being. It needs more souls who remember. And now, beloved, that soul is you. So rise not with force, but with grace. Move not from fear, but from alignment. Shine not to be seen, but because it is your nature to glow. And when the world forgets, as it often does, simply remember for it. You are the breath of the divine made visible. You are the silence between the stars. You are the unshakable presence in which all things come and go. And you are here now awake. So let the story fall away. Let the striving soften. Let the remembrance deepen. You are not here to find the light. You are here to remember you are the light. And you always have been. There is a sacred invitation whispered into the silence of every morning Live today not as a routine, not as a rehearsal, but as if it were your last. Not from fear, but from reverence. Not from panic, but from presence. For when you remember that nothing is promised, not even the breath you are taking now, everything becomes sacred. Every glance, every step, every ordinary act, drenched suddenly in meaning, becomes a prayer to the eternal. What if today was not just another day, but the final brushstroke on the masterpiece of your life? Would you rush through it in worry? Would you carry grudges into its fragile hours? Or would you finally see the miracle in your own hands, in the eyes of those you love, in the soft hush of your own heartbeat? To live as if this were your last day is not to dwell in morbidity. It is to awaken. It is to peel away the illusion of tomorrow and let the present moment shine so brightly that it blinds every lie you've ever believed about what matters. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Do not resist them. That resistance is where suffering lies. But presence, that is where God breathes. You are not here forever. This body will fade. These roles you play will dissolve. The house you built, the titles you gathered, the opinions you feared, none of them will follow you beyond the veil. But your love will. Your awareness will. Your choices made in truth, your compassion given freely, your courage to forgive, these are eternal. These are what carry you home. When you live each day as if it were your last, you don't postpone your joy. You don't wait to say, I love you or I forgive you. You don't let pride write the ending to a story still aching for peace. You understand that no moment is too small for significance, and no soul is unworthy of your kindness, including your own. Imagine walking through this day with the awareness that every encounter is holy, that every person you pass is a fellow traveler on the same brief journey through form. How gently you would walk, how carefully you would speak, how quickly you would release the need to be right in favor of being real. Because when the ego dissolves in the presence of impermanence, only love remains. And yet, how quickly we forget. We get lost in the illusions of time as if tomorrow is guaranteed. We speak harshly, assuming there will be time to apologize. We stay in jobs that suffocate us, relationships that numb us, patterns that diminish us all because we think we have more time. But time, beloved, is not a promise. It is a gift, a miracle. A single breath is a universe, and one day you will take your last. Will you have lived fully by then? Will you have said what your soul came here to say? Will you have danced your dance, sung your song, wept your tears, and poured your essence into the world without restraint? To live this way consciously, presently, passionately is not to deny the future, but to surrender the illusion that it is where your life begins. Your life is not out there. It is not waiting in some imagined someday. It is here. Now, in this inhale, in this exhale, in this tender, fleeting, holy instant, you must not wait to live. The soul cannot thrive on delays. There is no spiritual awakening that begins tomorrow. There is only this moment and your willingness to be completely alive within it. This day is a cathedral, not built of stone, but of seconds. Not lit by stained glass, but by awareness. Enter it barefoot. Enter it reverently. Let your thoughts be prayers. Let your actions be offerings. Let your silence be filled not with absence, but with presence. And let love be the altar upon which you lay your worries down. Living each day as if it were your last is not a practice in despair. It is the highest form of gratitude. It is the soul's way of saying, thank you for this chance. Thank you for this breath. Thank you for the simple, sacred fact that I exist. And from this reverence comes transformation. When you begin to see the day not as a burden, but as a canvas painted by divine hands, something inside you softens. You stop chasing meaning and start becoming it. You begin to realize that the greatest prayer is not spoken aloud, but lived in the way you pour yourself into every sacred now. A smile given freely, a moment of stillness shared, a truth told without needing reward. This is where the divine reveals itself not in thunder or spectacle, but in your smallest acts done with great love. We have been taught to measure our lives by milestones, by trophies, by achievements carved into stone. But the soul is not interested in what you've gathered. It wants to know what you've given. Not what you've built, but what you've become in the process of living. It asked, did you love fearlessly? Did you forgive fully? Did you notice the stars, the laughter, the quiet sobs in the night? Or did you rush past the miracles, trying to control a future that was never yours to command? There is a peculiar wisdom in remembering death not as a shadow to be feared, but as a mirror held up to life. It does not ask you to mourn, but to wake up. It does not steal your days, it returns them to you. Clearer, brighter, weightless. It says, if not now, when? And you realize the someday you've been waiting for is not coming, because it's already here. To live as if this were your last day is not to be reckless. It is to become exquisitely aware. Aware that every word you speak plants a seed, that every thought you dwell on shapes your being, that every time you choose compassion over judgment, silence over noise, truth over pretense, you are chiseling your soul into its truest form. You no longer need to strive to be remembered. You need only to be fully present. The world forgets names. Statues crumble. But presence leaves an imprint on eternity. A moment of pure love given in silence echoes far longer than a lifetime of applause. And so walk gently through this day, not timidly but reverently, as one who knows they are walking through the sacred. Notice the way the sunlight rests on the leaves, as if even the trees are being kissed by the infinite. Listen to the wind not just as sound but as message. Feel your own breath and marvel at the miracle that it is happening at all. You were not placed here to survive this day. You were placed here to sanctify it, to meet it as a lover meets a long-lost companion with awe, with tears, with full-hearted devotion. What if you stopped waiting for joy and began living from it? What if you stopped protecting your heart and started offering it as a gift? Not because life is safe, but because your soul was never fragile. It was made to feel, to risk, to open, to dance, even while trembling. The mind may argue, it may insist there are things left undone, goals unmet, stories unfinished, but the heart speaks a simpler truth. You are not here to complete a checklist. You are here to complete the moment, and in doing so, you complete yourself. Everything you run toward will one day dissolve. The only thing that endures is who you become in the running. So run not toward the world's favor, but toward your own truth. Run toward your soul's calling, not its avoidance. And if you must run, run with love trailing behind you like a ribbon of light. Life, when stripped of its distractions, is not a puzzle to be solved, but a song to be sung. Not a test to be passed, but a presence to be lived. And in singing your song with honesty, with depth, with reverence for the brevity of it all, you become the very sound of divinity expressed through flesh. So do not wait. Do not wait for the perfect time to be real. Do not wait for the world to validate what your heart already knows. Do not wait to give, to forgive, to rise, to weep, to speak, to shine, because the soul does not measure life in years, but in the depth of each lived breath. And this breath, this one right now, is holy. There is a tenderness that arrives when you no longer treat time as an enemy, but as an intimate companion. You begin to hold each hour with both hands, not squeezing it for meaning, but caressing it for the miracle that it is. You no longer look past the moment in search of something more, for you have come to see that the moment is the something more, it is the whole, the holy, the hidden gift disguised as ordinary life. When you surrender to the impermanence of all things, a strange peace overtakes you. It is not the peace of knowing how it all ends, but the peace of no longer needing to know. You become like the river, not asking where it will go, but flowing anyway. You trust that each bend is placed by grace, each stone beneath your surface meant to shape your song. You flow not because the path is clear, but because stillness was never your nature. You were born to move with life, not resist it. Gratitude then becomes not a practice, but a posture, a way of standing before the world with arms unclenched, eyes wide, and heart exposed. You begin to thank the silence for its wisdom, the sorrow for its tenderness, the mistakes for their brutal, sacred honesty. Nothing is wasted anymore. Even your most broken moments become teachers dressed in humility. There is no part of you that has been unloved by the universe. Even your regrets have been held. Even your forgetfulness has been embraced by something infinite, waiting with patient arms for your return. This day, this fleeting constellation of minutes, is not asking you to earn your worth. It is asking you to remember it. To walk through the hours, not proving who you are, but allowing who you are to rise unfiltered. And when you touch that depth within you, when you taste the eternal in a single breath, you begin to live from an entirely different place. You become less concerned with how others perceive you and more devoted to how sincerely you meet your own soul. The masks begin to fall, not because you force them, but because they no longer fit. Truth becomes your only skin. What once required effort now flows with ease. You speak, not to impress, but to express what the infinite is whispering through you. You create, not to be seen, but because beauty insists on moving through your hands. You forgive, not to be holy, but because resentment feels foreign in your now softened heart. And in this space, something profound begins to shift. Time no longer feels like a threat, but a river carrying you home. Relationships become mirrors, not battlegrounds. Challenges become invitations, not punishments. Every moment, even the ones that bruise, becomes a part of your return to the real. You begin to notice that the soul doesn't measure success in triumphs, but in presence. That the most important question is no longer, what have I done? But have I shown up with love? And when that becomes your compass, life stops being something to conquer it, becomes something to commune with. You are no longer driven by the noise of the world. You are drawn by the silence within it. That silence has become your sanctuary, your teacher, your oldest truth. In it, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And from that remembering, you start to live not as a reaction, but as a revelation. Each breath becomes a soft return. Each step becomes a prayer of gratitude to the earth beneath you. You are not walking towards something. You are walking as something, as peace, as presence, as a fragment of the eternal wearing a human form just long enough to say, I was here and I loved. When you live with the awareness that each breath might be the final word of your earthly story, everything becomes illuminated with unspeakable clarity. You stop arguing over illusions. You stop carrying stories that no longer echo truth. You no longer need to be right. You simply need to be real. And in that realness, you discover a purity that the world could never give and therefore could never take away. There is something quietly heroic about those who have touched the impermanence of all things and yet still choose to open their hearts. It takes no strength to build walls, but to love anyway, to hope anyway, to walk barefoot through the fragile hours of a vanishing day with your soul exposed and your arms outstretched. This is the mark of one who has awakened. You begin to see that no moment is a repetition. The sky has never looked quite like this. The wind has never whispered this exact phrase through the trees. The face of your beloved, aged by time and touched by sorrow, is more holy now than it ever was. Nothing repeats. Nothing returns. And so you stop waiting. You stop postponing your tenderness. You give now. You weep now. You speak your truth now. Because tomorrow has become a myth, and now is the only altar where anything sacred can be offered. And the offering is you. Not the version of you that pleases, performs, or persuades, but the raw flame that flickers beneath your ribcage, the quiet knowing, the gentle strength, the vulnerable truth. This is your gift to the world, not what you produce, but what you are when all production ceases. You are not here to dazzle with accomplishments. You are here to remind others of their light. By the way you refuse to dim yours, you will not always be understood. That is the cost of living from the soul. But what is misunderstood by minds is often recognized by hearts. You are not here to explain your essence. You are here to embody it. And in doing so, you become the lighthouse that needs no horn to call ships home. Your stillness alone is enough. When death becomes real, not as a fear, but as a presence, you become incapable of squandering yourself. You say no when your spirit shrinks. You say yes when your joy calls. You bow out of arguments that steal your peace and bow into silence that restores it. You no longer count your days by tasks completed, but by truth lived. The sun will rise without your permission and set without your resistance. Your task is not to control the arc of light, it is to receive it, to let it wash over your face, to let it illuminate your shadows, to let it remind you that you too are made of radiance, that you too were never meant to hide. And so you begin to walk as if the earth were sacred again, because it is. You touch things with reverence. You look people in the eyes, not as distractions, but as fellow sparks of the infinite. You speak less, but with more weight. You choose your presence over your performance. You move not to get somewhere, but to feel where you are. Even your pain softens, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer exiled. You sit with it. You welcome it as part of this great tapestry of what it means to be alive. And strangely, it begins to heal, not by force, but by love, by inclusion, by the sacred light of your unflinching attention. You are no longer at war with yourself. This is what it means to live each day as if it were your last, not recklessly, but reverently. Not with haste, but with holiness. You do not try to escape life. You press your ear against it and listen for the heartbeat of God. There comes a moment when living with the truth of impermanence no longer feels like a burden, but becomes a doorway not to despair, but to devotion. For when you truly know that nothing lasts forever, you stop wasting your sacred energy on the trivial. You stop clinging to the roles that dim your light, the opinions that drown your voice, the attachments that whisper promises of security but chain you to illusion. You begin to live, not to protect your life, but to offer it. And what a stunning offering your life becomes. Every word you speak begins to carry weight, because you understand it might be the last your lips will ever form. So you choose kindness, not because it's easy, but because cruelty feels foreign to your essence. You offer forgiveness, not because the wound was small, but because you refuse to let it define your final breath. You speak the truth you've buried beneath years of politeness and pretending not for applause, but for alignment. Because living in dishonesty, even if socially rewarded, is too great a price to pay when every day might be your last canvas. You notice in your living a soft rebellion taking shape, not loud, not forceful, but undeniable. You are no longer interested in being impressive. You are interested in being real. You are no longer seduced by speed. You are pulled by presence. You are no longer trying to win a race you never agreed to run. Instead, you walk slowly, barefoot, listening to the earth and your spirit in equal measure. And in that slowness, you find the divine. The eyes of strangers become sacred scripture. The sound of your own breath becomes a hymn. You do not need to go somewhere holy to feel the sacred, because you now realize you carry the temple within you. Every moment is a sanctuary when you show up with reverence. Every conversation becomes communion when you speak from your soul instead of your script. Even the mundane begins to shimmer. The act of tying your shoes becomes a blessing. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. You stop waiting for peak experiences and realize that life is not about the peaks, it is about the presence. The presence you bring to the ordinary, the love you weave into the spaces no one else sees. That is the true miracle. That is where the divine most often hides. And what of your fears? They still come, but they come as visitors now, not masters. They knock, but you no longer build your life around their arrival. You greet them, you learn from them, you let them pass. Because fear, too, is part of the human palette, but it is not the color with which you will paint your final day. Instead, you reach for the deeper hues: courage, compassion, clarity. You no longer ask life to be easy, you ask to be true within it. You no longer pray for certainty, you pray for peace with the unknown. You no longer demand perfection from yourself or others, you simply invite what is real, what is raw, what is reverent. And then without fanfare, you begin to glow. Not with effort, but with essence. Not because you've reached some spiritual summit, but because you've finally stopped resisting your own light. You realize that you were never broken. You were only buried. Beneath layers of fear, layers of programming, layers of trying to be everything but what you are. And now, in living as though each breath might be your last, you become honest, naked, sacred, alive. This aliveness is not adrenaline. It is not excitement. It is something quieter, more enduring. It is a presence so deep it silences the noise of comparison and ambition. It is a love so complete it no longer needs to be earned or chased. It is you in your wholeness, in your holiness, finally meeting life not from the edges of your existence, but from the center. And from that center, you radiate. There is a stillness that only arrives when you've made peace with endings not as tragedies, but as sacred closures, as portals through which your soul passes on its way to remembering what it came here to know. You begin to see that everything that ends does so not to punish, but to reveal. Each departure, each letting go, each final breath, these are not accidents of a cruel universe, but precise invitations from a loving source whispering, now, wake up. Ah, and you do. You awaken not in a dramatic instant, but in the slow rising of your own awareness, like a tide that climbs higher with each moment of presence. You start to feel how life has been speaking to you all along in the aches of your longing, in the laughter that came from nowhere, in the heartbreaks that stripped away your pretense, and in the quiet joy that asked for no audience. It was all the divine waiting patiently for you to notice that you were never alone, that you were never unloved, that nothing, absolutely nothing, has ever been wasted. And so when you live this day as if it were your last, you no longer curse the wounds, you bless them, because they softened you, because they opened your heart, because they took you beneath the surface where the eternal speaks. You begin to understand that your life is not a straight line to success or safety. It is a spiral, a sacred unraveling, a return. And every loss that you thought would destroy you only peeled away what could never stay. Every failure that seemed like the end was only an invitation to go deeper. Every delay that left you frustrated was grace in disguise, placing you exactly where love could find you. And now you are here, fully here. You no longer reach forward or grasp backward. You no longer delay your joy for a future version of yourself. You stop bargaining with time. You stop negotiating with your soul. You realize that you do not need to be more enlightened, more accomplished, more anything. You only need to be more present, more honest, more alive to this one sacred breath. This is where the soul lives in the unrepeatable now. You walk through this day as if it were borrowed, as if it were a gift wrapped in wind and light and color, not because it's fleeting, but because it's enough, more than enough. And in that awareness, you begin to notice how your energy changes. You no longer rush, not because there isn't much to do, but because nothing is worth your peace. You no longer argue for your limitations, because you finally see how limitless you are beneath the stories. You no longer seek to control others, because you are too devoted to mastering your own presence. And in that presence, your life begins to bloom, not outwardly, but inwardly. The seeds that were planted long ago by grace, buried beneath fear and waiting for your surrender, begin to open, quietly, miraculously, without demand, without deadlines. You become the flowering of a truth that was never not there. It only needed your stillness to emerge. Even your voice changes. It lowers in volume, but deepens in power. You speak less from opinion and more from knowing. You stop needing to be understood because your truth is no longer up for debate. You realize the only thing worth offering is your presence, unfiltered and unafraid. And this presence, this grounded, sacred, unhurried presence becomes your medicine, not just for you, but for others. You begin to heal rooms just by walking into them, not because you carry answers, but because you carry alignment. Your very being whispers to others. It is safe to be real. It is safe to feel. It is safe to come home. And that, beloved, is what you are doing. You are coming home. To the part of you that never left, the part untouched by failure or praise, the part beneath the name, beneath the roles, beneath the flesh, the eternal spark closed in temporary form. So when you live each day as if it were your last, you do not grieve it is too full of grace for that. You do not rush it is too rich for that. You do not fear, you bow. You bow to the mystery. You bow to the beauty. You bow to the ordinary divinity in every passing moment. And in that bowing you rise. There is a soft light that greets you when you have nothing left to chase. It does not arrive with thunder. It does not cry out your name. It simply glows like the hush of morning before the sun breaks open the sky. It is the light of surrender of the soul, no longer trying to be anything more than what it already is. And in that light, you see clearly for the first time there was never anything missing. You begin to live not in defiance of death, but in harmony with life. You stop measuring your days in tasks completed or accolades received, and start measuring them in how gently you held yourself, how courageously you showed up, how fully you loved without guarantee. And in this final recognition, you weep not out of sorrow, but out of reverence, because you see how sacred it all was. The laughter that spilled from your belly, the quiet walks no one noticed, the nights you held your own trembling body and whispered, "Still I rise," the mistakes that shattered you into more honest pieces, the failures that pried open parts of your heart that success never could. It was all sacred. There are no ordinary days, only eyes that have forgotten how to see. And now your vision has returned. You do not ask life for more time. You ask for more depth, more presence, more holy pauses. You do not beg for security. You trust the breath you've been given and the intelligence that gave it. You do not wish for someone else's journey. You walk yours with quiet pride, knowing that even your detours were divinely appointed. And if today truly were your last, you would not panic. You would rise slowly. You would touch the earth with gratitude. You would call those you love and say not, "I need," but "thank you." You would breathe in the scent of rain or the sound of a child's laughter, as if the entire cosmos had orchestrated it just for you. And perhaps you would sit in silence, no need to fill it, no need to run from it. Just sit. And in that sitting, feel your own soul rise to meet you with arms wide open. No judgment, no urgency, just presence. You would realize that nothing more needed to be done. That your being, your presence, your honest existence was enough. Always was. Always will be. The miracle was never in what you achieved. It was in what you allowed yourself to become. Open, soft, real, awake. And as the day draws its final breath, you would smile, not because everything was easy, but because everything was seen. Everything was lived. Nothing was wasted. You did not sleepwalk through your time here. You did not hide your light beneath the noise. You did not postpone your truth to please a world that never knew your name. You showed up. You felt deeply. You loved anyway. And now, as the sun sets not just on the day, but on the illusion that anything was ever separate from God, you would feel it. Peace, not as a concept, but as a resting place. And so, beloved soul, live today not as a countdown, but as a coronation. Not as a finish line, but as a homecoming. Let your every breath be a benediction. Let your every step be a devotion. Let your life, this one fleeting, eternal, magnificent life, be lived not in fear of the last day, but in honor of every single one. Because in the end, it was never about how long you lived, but how deeply you remembered that each day was a miracle, and you were always the light.